What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson, and the New York Giants are reportedly closing in on another contract extension. Of course, we know they had some big deals handed out this offseason, most notably 4 years, $160 million to Daniel Jones. The Giants making it a point of emphasis to extend their in-house talent. Well, they got another player on deck who was an All-Pro, second-team All-Pro in 2022, Dexter Lawrence, big sexy Dexy. The Giants are already negotiating a contract extension with the All-Pro defensive tackle, and honestly, I am so excited because I think that Dexter Lawrence is such an awesome player, such an awesome person, and I can't wait to see him spend the rest of his career wearing big blue. So we're going to go ahead and talk about the New York Giants' reported contract extension discussions with Dexter Lawrence, what it could mean for the team, how much money they might be dishing out to Dexter Lawrence, and all of that good stuff. But before we do, make sure to leave a like if you do enjoy this episode, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. But without further ado, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? And what are your thoughts on the initial contract negotiations between the Giants and Dexter Lawrence?
I'm doing great, man. I know you're doing well yourself. And look, guys, Dexter Lawrence is one of those few players that come around there like, this guy should be a Giant for life. You know what I mean? This is a player who took one of the biggest steps, developmental steps we've seen in a very long time. You know, Cordell Patterson, Andre Patterson, our defensive line coach we got from the Minnesota Vikings, did a tremendous job with Dexter Lawrence, making sure that he expanded on his talents and really kind of lived up to the potential and the hype as the former 17th overall pick. Dexter Lawrence, started his career under Patrick Graham's tutelage and, did not really exercise the most of his frame and exercise the most of his qualities. Was good, but not great. Had a good rookie season. 2020, 2021 weren't so good. But then you don't see a player like this, suddenly go from being, okay, like maybe we missed on that, to being as good as he was in 2022. Unless there's just tremendous support and coaching behind the scenes doing the work to help him get into that position. He had a 92.2 PFF pressure grade last year. He blew his previous numbers out of the water. He almost doubled his pressure totals. He had 70 total pressures last season with 9 sacks, almost triple his 2021 numbers. He had 26 quarterback hits, 35 hurries, and posted the best run defense grade in his career. So this wasn't just a player who said, you know what, I'm going to go all out and put great pressure numbers on the table. I'm also going to do it paired with tremendous run stopping capabilities. So that frame, 6'4", 342 pounds. You don't see men like this move very often. You don't see men like this very often in general. He is a monster human being. This is a person who dwarfs any poor soul that happens to be find themselves standing next to him, and he is going to get a monster contract extension because of it. Now, you kind of referenced a couple other big contracts that have happened in the most recent past, notably Daron Payne of the Washington Commanders, former 13th overall pick. Daron Payne got a 4-year, $90 million deal, $22.5 million per season, $28 million signing bonus with a $59 million guaranteed. Now, defensive tackles are traditionally one of the more durable positions. So when you're paying Dexter Lawrence, it's because you're expecting him to be playing a lot of snaps. Now, last year, he played the most snaps in his career at 977. The problem is they really need to get him off the field sometimes because he is such a big dude. You need him to be healthy. You need him to be just really improve his stamina, make sure that he is good to go when the fourth quarter rolls around. The Giants needed him on the field so badly because when they put in those backup defensive tackles, all hell broke loose. It just was not good enough. They went out and get Roche Nunez this offseason. They were talking about Robinson from the Rams, but Nunez Roche should really do a lot of good for this team as a depth piece and helping to keep him healthy, and he's a very good run stopper specifically. So Dexter Lawrence can go off the field for a couple snaps, and then you have him healthy for the duration of this upcoming season and beyond, hopefully. But this contract extension is going to be massive. We'll talk about what we think the numbers might look like, if they'll be a little bit higher than Daron Payne's, but coming off a second-team All-Pro level season, I think he compounds on that. I think he has another really big year, Anthony. But looking at his numbers, how big of a step he took last season, do you think that the Giants wait until maybe midway point to see if there's any regression, or maybe it was a one-season wonder, or do you think they're confident he's going to be a monster for a very long time and they extend him before the 2023 season kicks off?
I mean, I think they're confident. I think that they should be confident. You don't have a year like that without being a truly special player. Like, this is not something that I can see him regressing from that badly. I mean, yes, this was a almost historic year for Dexter Lawrence. It was elite, the best that we've seen from him so far. So maybe there will be some regression. You can't always expect a player to just improve every single year. At some point, they do hit a peak, and maybe Dexter Lawrence did hit his peak, but I don't think he was a bad player by any means for the first few seasons of his career. I still think he was a very good player, just took that extra step under some new coaching. Any step backwards that he might take is not going to be that significant, in my opinion. That's just what I predict, and I have a feeling that the Giants feel the same way. I think that Dexter Lawrence will continue to be a dominant force in the middle of their defensive line, and I think that he's such a valuable piece of their defense that he's going to be worth whatever they pay him, because the way that Wink Martindale structures his defense, with the run defense in particular, it's very reliant on those front defensive linemen to get the job done. Maybe they don't get a bunch of tackles. Maybe they don't get a lot of tackles for loss. Dexter Lawrence doesn't necessarily always make the run stop himself. But why he's so important and valuable to this team, and something that a lot of fans might not realize, is that he's very good at moving offensive linemen into a spot and plugging a rushing lane to open up a lane for a linebacker. That's really how Wink Martindale likes his defenses to be ran, where the Dexter Lawrences of the world, the Leonard Williamses of the world, right? Those guys on the defensive line, they're really just opening up gaps for the linebackers to make the play. So the real key to the Giants defense last year was not the fact that, yes, I know that they needed defensive line depth this offseason, but it wasn't the fact that they didn't have a great defensive line, because honestly, they had two really good players on the defensive line. The real problem with the Giants defense was the lack of linebacker talent, because a lot of the times Dexter Lawrence would make the play, and now it's just about the linebacker executing, and those linebackers that the Giants had out there last year, they were not executing. So the major improvement that the Giants made this offseason on the defensive side of the ball is that they gave Dexter Lawrence somebody who he can rely on. Dexter Lawrence can move an offensive lineman, open up a gap for the linebacker to shoot through, and now Bobby Okereke, all that athleticism, great tackling ability, he can actually go ahead and execute. So that's really where the hidden impact and the hidden value of Dexter Lawrence lies in Wink Martindale's defense specifically. So when you're looking at Dexter Lawrence, how valuable he is to the Giants, he's going to get a lot of money from them, and it's going to be worth it because of the scheme that they're playing with. Now, if Wink Martindale goes and after the season gets hired as a head coach elsewhere, then you might have to change your whole idea of Dexter Lawrence, how you utilize him. But again, he's such a talented player, and the main thing about Dexter Lawrence that makes him so valuable is the fact that he's a two-way player. He's not just a run stuffer. He's not someone who just clogs gaps and makes tackles for loss. No, he's a truly phenomenal pass rusher who absolutely just torments quarterbacks day in and day out. He's in the backfield not only getting after the running backs, but getting after the quarterbacks on a down-by-down basis. I mean, go ahead, look at the playoff game that we won, the wild card game against the Minnesota Vikings. The Giants do not win that game without Dexter Lawrence having a crucial pressure down the stretch. I mean, go rewatch that play where Xavier McKinney made the big stop on TJ Hawkinson short of the sticks on fourth down. Dexter Lawrence was right in the lap of Kirk Cousins. He drove an offensive lineman back. He said, you know what? One more play. Let me just take out all energy that I have left, empty the gas that's in my tank, and go. And Dexter Lawrence did that, and he ultimately disrupted the quarterback, forced him to check down. If you take a look at the X's and O's and the all-22 angle of that play, there was someone breaking over the middle of the field that Kirk Cousins easily could have completed a pass to get the first down and keep that game alive. But because Dexter Lawrence was right in his face, he could never see that player across the middle of the field, forced to check down into the flat, and that's where we trust Xavier McKinney to show up and make a big play. So that's the value of Dexter Lawrence. It's not always about the stat sheet of how many combined tackles, how many tackles for loss, how many sacks did he have. It's not about that. Let's look at the pressures. Let's look at the impact of the plays that he makes on the film, all of that stuff. So Dexter Lawrence, invaluable to the Giants defense, and he is going to get paid. I don't need to see more. I don't need to wait until the midway point of the season. Listen, the Giants have him playing on the fifth-year option. It's a bargain because it's worth only $12.4 million compared to the 22 or more that he's going to make once he gets his extension. So maybe you just want to wait it out and don't want to have to pay him because the cap hit's going to increase. But depending on how you structure it, the Giants could even try to extend him now to lower his 2023 cap hit if they give him a big signing bonus. That's a huge option for them to free up more cap space as we get closer to the 2023 NFL draft. So, Alex, talking about his impact and everything like that, how much do you think he's about to get paid? Because you just mentioned De'Aaron Payne. He's getting $22 million per season. Dexter Lawrence, do you think that he surpasses $22 million per year, stays at around 20, or matches 22? Where do you think his number ultimately lands?
So that's a good question. And before I answer that, I wanted to reference just a couple of his pressures, metrics from this past season. And he had 4 games with a minimum of 7 total pressures, guys. He had 2 games with 2 sacks. Those type of numbers for a interior defensive lineman, like almost a nose tackle in his regard, is unbelievable. You're talking about a guy that's blowing up double teams left and right. And like you referenced against the Minnesota Vikings, he had 7 total pressures in that game. 7 pressures with 4 quarterback hits. He was unstoppable, and his motor just doesn't stop going, man. The fact that he's that big and able to maintain that level of stamina is borderline impossible. I don't know how it's possible. I mean, I get tired walking up the freaking stairs, let alone that guy playing almost 1,000 snaps in a season playing defensive tackle for the Giants at 340 pounds. That is ridiculous. So yes, I agree with you in the sense that I don't need to see any more. Dexter Lawrence is a force, and that talent is just hitting its peak. You're looking at a guy that's 25 years old. He's 25, guys. I'm older than Dexter Lawrence, and I think I'm probably the size of his leg. Like, he's a monster human being. That type of talent, that type of longevity, the fact that he's been very healthy throughout his career, knock on wood, a million times. I have seen enough. I am on board with you to extend him now, because if the Giants do want to bring in somebody else and spend a little bit more money, they can lower his cap hit, which I believe is $10 million for this season. So it's definitely an opportunity for them to maybe reduce that number and open up a little bit of salary relief if they need the cash. They also haven't restructured Leonard Williams' deal yet, so that could happen as well. They do need some money, I believe, for the draft class upcoming. Right now, according to Over the Cap, they have about $2.3 million. So there are moves that are incoming. I guarantee Leonard Williams' deal is getting restructured, or he's taking a cap hit, or a pay cut for what it's worth. So there are some moves that the Giants will certainly make, and Dexter Lawrence is making $12.4 million, so it's even a little bit more than I thought it was originally. So they can definitely extend him and reduce that a little bit. But to answer your question previously, how much do I think Daron Payne's going to make? I mean, he has to be making right around what Daron Payne got paid, right? Like, that's kind of where I see the benchmark. That's like the baseline. I'd say right around there. Maybe he gets slightly more than that. I mean, Payne's a really good player, also 25 years old. He's actually a little bit slightly older than Dexter Lawrence. So, I feel like Dexter hitting his peak, and Daron Payne, definitely, I don't know exactly what his numbers are. I can look them up right now as we're kind of breaking this down. But Daron Payne last year, let's see, he put up decent numbers, not even close to as good as Dexter Lawrence. He had 49 total pressures. He did have 12 sacks though, and 27 hurries. So his numbers are good, but he has 17.4% missed tackle rate, which is pretty significant. His tackle grade was awful. Was not really the best run defender. I would make the argument that Dexter Lawrence is pretty sizably better than him. He had 70 total pressures, guys. We're talking about 21 more pressures, and he had really good run defense grades too. So if we're being honest, he's probably going to make more than Daron Payne, considering he's better and he's younger. So maybe you're looking in the $24, $23 million range if we're being realistic, which is still a sickening amount of money for a defensive tackle. But Dexter Lawrence isn't just a run-stopping DT. He is a pass-rushing DT, and that's hard to find. So I think he gets paid a little bit more than Daron Payne. I think that the guarantees are probably in the range of $60 to $65 million, something around there. I could see like a 4-year, $100 million deal, something maybe a little bit less, like 4 years, 95, 4 years, 97, but probably $60 to $65 million guaranteed. It's going to have to be more. Payne getting paid that much certainly puts him up there in terms of how much he's going to make on a yearly basis. What do you think about that?
No, I think that 4-year, $100 million, that's exactly what I had in my mind. I think he gets $25 million per year. I think a 4-year deal makes sense. Honestly, I wouldn't even hate a 5-year deal for a player like Dexter Lawrence, because he is so young, and you could argue that he does have room to grow. I know we talked earlier, maybe he'll regress a little bit, take a step back, but he still does have the potential to get even better. He's young. Like, Dexter Lawrence is just scratching the surface of his NFL career. Dexter Lawrence, and I mean defensive tackles in general, play a long time, and Dexter Lawrence being such a great player, being a player that can do multiple things for defense, run game, pass rush game, he can do it both. He's going to be around for a while, and he's going to be a hot commodity, and the Giants are going to want to keep him in the fold for as long as they can. So 4-year deal, maybe even a 5-year deal, they both make sense to me, and I do think that $25 million per year is reasonable now. I mean, look back a few years ago when Leonard Williams reset the defensive lineman market. He made himself $21 million per year. So Dexter Lawrence is going to surpass that. And I do believe that he surpasses the $22 million per year that Darren Payne has, because I think that Dexter Lawrence, you just mentioned it, being a younger player who has arguably proven more, done more for the Giants defense than Payne has done for Washington's defense. I think he surpasses that 22, and I think he goes as high as $25 million per season. And I don't think that that's a bad deal at all, considering the impact that he makes. I mean, let's look at it this way. When we look at the top edge rushers in the NFL, those premier pass rushers, 25 million is not crazy to throw out there, to throw out that number for one of those top edge rushers. But Dexter Lawrence, since he's not an edge rusher and he's a defensive lineman, fans are like, oh, you can't pay a defensive lineman that much money. Well, he has the exact same impact. Maybe even he's more impactful than some of those top edge rushers in the NFL, because some of those top edge rushers, yes, they are super impactful as pass rushers. So is Dexter Lawrence from a different position, which completely changes the game, but he's also an elite run defender. He does both at an elite level. So I think that when you're looking at the value, I know a lot of fans want to say there's not that much value in interior defensive linemen, but let's look at the value that he provides on that contract compared to what some of the top edge rushers might provide in terms of value on their contracts. I think it's quite comparable. So I think that $25 million per year makes sense. But Alex, what are your thoughts on that, kind of looking at his perceived value at his position compared to other positions nearby like edge rusher or linebacker, the value that those positions have and the price tags that they receive? Is defensive line really that far off? I mean, as this market continues to grow, Dexter Lawrence, in my opinion, has that impact and has that value that some of those other players at those positions are making, and yet fans kind of say that that's more justified. So what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's hard to say because he's so much more than just what his position suggests, right? Like, you talk about a defensive tackle, you're thinking like Dalvin Tomlinson, right? Like, that's like your perfect defensive tackle. He's a great run stopper. He plugs the gaps. He does a lot of good things for you in the trenches, but he's not a pass rusher, right? He never was, never has been. Dexter Lawrence plugs the gaps. He beats the double teams. He does all the things you want to do. He leaves it all on the field. He played almost 1,000 snaps last year for a DT. That's ridiculous. You're looking at like Aaron Donald's like one of the only guys that really manages to do that year in and year out. And then you look at his bill of health, which has traditionally been really good. Again, knock on wood. And then you look at his pressure numbers. He had more pressures than most of our freaking outside linebackers and most of our actual pass rushers. When's the last time we had a pass rusher have 70 pressures and, close to 10 sacks, let alone a defensive tackle doing it? So if you're asking me, I mean, you look at other positions, like linebacker traditionally is not one a lot of teams are spending big on. Like, we're spending $8 million, I think, on average or something like that, $10 million for Bobby Okereke. So that's not a tremendous amount of money by any means. It really depends on like the value a player has, and Dexter Lawrence is a unicorn in that way. He is so much more valuable than just a DT. He's more of a DE. He's like an elite defensive end. He's like if you took Leonard Williams and Dalvin Tomlinson and smashed them into one player. That is what he is. Great run stopper, great pass rusher, and he can do it all for you. And he's a really great teammate. You watch Sexy Dexy, he's got so much character, so much personality. He just brings a lot to this team that's intangible that I believe isn't necessarily like valued on a scorecard. It isn't valued on the film. You see it on the sidelines. You see him dancing. You see him getting the stadium hype. You see the energy. You see the commercials. You see the social media content. Like, he's all over the place. He, in my opinion, he's one of the more underrated faces of this franchise. We talk about Saquon. We talk about DJ. We talk about Kayvon. I think Dexter Lawrence should be right in the conversation because he is one of the most outgoing and just exciting players to watch on this team. And in my opinion, last year, he was one of the biggest bright spots, if not the biggest bright spot in terms of just elevating his game to another level. In my opinion, if we had to give a grade out or like an award out for, who took the biggest step forward, it was absolutely Dexter Lawrence. And it's not even a conversation, right? Like, I would say, like, maybe Saquon Barkley bounced back, but we already knew he was great. Daniel Jones took a big step forward, but it wasn't like so big that it was like, okay, like this is a totally different player. I think the scheme helped him a lot and the coaching did, but Dexter Lawrence just put it on the field, man. I think DJ could have a similar breakout this upcoming year, though, for what it's worth. I think with a better offensive line, we draft well, get him some receivers. Maybe we'll draft a receiver. I don't know what they're going to do in the draft, but I do believe that if they do bolster this offense, Daniel Jones could see a sizable improvement across the board, which would be the best case scenario given we just gave him a long-term extension. But Dexter Lawrence, by far one of my favorite players, a player that is just such a blast to watch, and I'm very excited to see him continue dominating for a very long time wearing the Giants blue.
Absolutely, 1000%. Me too. Can't wait to see him play the rest of his career as a New York Giant, hopefully. I know he's got that New York Giants logo tatted on his bicep. He wants to be a Giant for life, and now the Giants are taking steps to make him a New York Giant for life, and that's exciting for me, and probably exciting for all Giants fans listening to this, knowing that Dexter Lawrence could soon be receiving a big, lucrative extension that does keep him with the team for a very long time. But let's go ahead before my lung collapses like the pocket when Dexter Lawrence is pass rushing and wrap this one up. We will catch you on the next one. Make sure to subscribe if you are new to the channel. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. Leave a like. And again, we'll catch you next one. Have a good one. And let's go Giants.